What if I told you the frontman of America's biggest feel-good rock band built his legacy on betraying other musicians? That he screwed over his guitarist with a humiliating offer, cashed in on a younger band's success, and then publicly admitted to a life that contradicted his whole saintly image. Here's how Jon Bon Jovi gave loyalty a bad name.
Like, subscribe. Thank you.
For 3 decades, Jon Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora were an unbreakable unit. They're the Jagger Richards, Tyler Perry of the arena rock generation. Jon, the face and the front man. Richie, the engine. He was the right-hand man, the collaborator, the guy with the riffs and the talk box that made songs like Living on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name explode. He went well beyond just the lead guitarist role into co-writer and quote-unquote musical soulmate. Their shared creative DNA built an empire that sold over 100 million records. They're on top of the world. A brotherhood forged in the clubs of New Jersey that ended up owning the stadiums of the planet. But as with all empires, we know that they corrode from the inside. The first crack in the foundation started around the mid-2000s. According to Richie, the dynamic began to change. Jon started bringing in this outside producer, John Shanks, not just to produce, but also to even co-write songs. Now, this was Richie's job. This was their job. And suddenly, Richie felt like he was being iced out. He wasn't the primary collaborator anymore. He was just another dude in the room. And this slow creeping change was eating at him. Richie later said that he probably should have left a couple albums before it all finally blew up. He felt like Jon was shifting his focus. He got the sense that Jon didn't want to really be in a band anymore. He just wanted to be a solo artist. And the Bon Jovi name was just the vehicle. The creative partnership was on life support. And then Jon Bon Jovi pulled the plug. The final, fatal blow to their brotherhood came in 2012. Richie had just finished touring for his solo album and was ready to get the band back together to start writing the next Bon Jovi record. So he reaches out to Jon. Jon drops his bombshell on him. The conversation was casual, but almost cold. Jon told him, "Nah, you don't have to worry about songwriting." And Richie was confused. He's like, why? Jon explained that he and John Shanks had already written about 30 songs and the album was basically done. Richie was pissed. This was a slow, calculated betrayal finally coming to a head. It went from this partnership to now an employer telling an employee his services were no longer required for something. It's like a demotion, basically. Or in the words of Zappa, shut up and play your guitar. Jon had effectively iced out his most important collaborator. Richie, feeling his role as the accurate mirror who could challenge Jon and shape the music, was now not doing his thing. So he listened to the new tracks and his heart sank. He said they didn't even sound like Bon Jovi. They sounded like every song that I did not want to write. The magic was gone, replaced by a creative machine that he was definitely no longer a part of. And really, it just came down to the fact that he felt like Jon was just systematically pushing him out so that he could become the sole star of this unit. But the breaking point hit on April 2nd of 2013. The band was in Calgary for the sold-out Because We Can tour. The machine, full motion. Trucks were unloaded. Guitars were tuned, catering was set up, but one person was missing. At 3:30 p.m., just hours before they were set to hit the stage in front of thousands of people, Jon Bon Jovi gets this call. Richie wasn't coming. He was not sick. He wasn't late. He just wasn't there. He had vanished, gone just like that. And it shocked the living hell out of Jon. He saw it as a real disappointment and betrayal. So the band had to scramble. Jon, who had not been the primary guitar player in decades, had to step up and handle both the vocals and the guitar parts. The show went on, but the brotherhood officially over. And immediately, the narrative war began. The band put out this vague official statement citing personal issues. Jon Bon Jovi and the press began to frame the narrative. He told the world that Richie has issues, pointed to Richie's past, his 2 stints in rehab in 2007, 2011. He talked about the stress of Richie being a single parent and dealing with emotional issues. Jon's core message was simple and brutal. You got to show up for work. And he painted Richie as this guy who just didn't have an ability to get it together anymore. Jon will go on to say over and over, there was never a fight. Richie just couldn't handle it. Now, Richie's story was different. He was furious at the implication that he was a mess. His narrative wasn't about addiction. It was about fatherhood. He insisted his daughter, Ava, needed me. It said family had to come first, and that he had no regrets about making that choice. What he did regret was how he left. He admitted he disappeared overnight, comparing his sudden vanishing act to something done by the mafia. It was a panicked move, but the most telling part of his story was this. He claimed he didn't receive a lot of compassion from Jon or the organization for the personal struggles he was going through anyways. He said he was a man on an island, creatively exiled and personally struggling, and he felt like nobody in the band even really gave a crap. So while the press was busy debating these personal issues versus family, a much dirtier story was bubbling just beneath the surface. This was the story that the accountants knew. And rumors began to fly that Richie hadn't just left, that he was actually fired, or at least pushed out over this financial dispute. The numbers were staggering. Sources allege that Richie, as a founding partner, was earning a fortune on the road, a reported $2 million a month, pretty good, plus 20% of tour profits. And the rumor was that he wanted more. And John, already creatively partnered with the cheaper John Shanks, said no. The evidence for this financial angle became chillingly clear when they looked at his replacement. The man who stepped in to fill Richie's shoes was Phil X, same guitarist that filled in during Richie's 2011 rehab stint. Rehab stint, I mean, not stunt. Phil X was a hired gun, not a partner, and his alleged paycheck was a fraction of Richie's. The reported number, $10,000 a month, with no profit share. Think about that. Phil is very active on YouTube, so if you happen to come across this video, know I say that you are one badass guitarist, but man, that is one hell of a low salary to be playing for Jon Bon Jovi. But nevertheless, a great opportunity. So I'm sure you probably took that into consideration. But it comes down to the fact the organization allegedly replaced a $2 million a month partner with a $10,000 a month employee. The brotherhood, gone. This was a business, and Jon Bon Jovi was cleaning house. So for 2 years, the two men stayed in their corners. The rift was deep and cold. Tensions were there. And then in 2024, the saga got a new explosive chapter. The band was releasing a 4-part Hulu docuseries. Thank you, good night. The Bon Jovi story. John was, of course, heavily involved. It was his story, his baby. Richie, to the surprise of many, even participated, filming interviews in London. In the film, he publicly apologized for the way that he left, reinforcing the quote-unquote mafia exit narrative. It seemed like perhaps things came to a thaw, but it was not a thaw. It was the final nuclear winter. A source close to Richie detailed this horrifying story of a reconciliation attempt gone wrong. In March 2024, around the time of the doc's release, Richie apparently went to John's house for his birthday, and he came bearing a peace offering, a vintage guitar. Nice gesture between two old friends, two musical soulmates. But instead of reminiscing, John allegedly sat Richie down on the couch to watch the documentary. Richie was like, "What the hell?" As he watched the episodes, his blood was boiling. He felt the entire documentary was pure hogwash, and he was sick and tired of what he was seeing. According to the source, Richie felt the film falsely implied he went to rehab back in 2013, running with John's personal issues narrative, and even worse, he felt it completely minimized his real stated reason for leaving, his daughter. He felt it was less of a documentary and just this 4-part character assassination, piece of corporate propaganda there to solidify John's version of history. He was so disgusted, he reportedly got up after the 3rd episode and walked out. But the ambush was not over. That same day, the source alleged, came the final straw, the final backstabbing incident. During this supposed peace offering visit, John allegedly brought up the idea of a reunion. Then he made his offer. He proposed that Richie could come back to the band, but his share would be cut, drastically. His original 25% partner share would be sliced down to just 10%. He'd still be making a crap load of money. But Richie was speechless. After 3 decades of building the empire, after being creatively quote-unquote iced out, being publicly painted as a burnout, he'd now get a 60% pay cut. So he felt that one as a kick in the gut. After that, the door slammed shut for good. Jon Bon Jovi's public comments became cold, detached, corporate. When asked if he was in contact with Richie, his answer was no, because he's not in the organization any longer. Not the band, the organization. It was the language of a CEO firing an employee, not a friend missing his brother. The sources close to John confirmed that he has no desire to reunite, says the two are like oil and water now. And the final nail in the coffin came with the announcement of the Bon Jovi Forever Tour in 2026. The promotional materials featured John, David, and Tico. Phil X was a guitarist. There was no Richie. The split was final. So that brotherhood that wrote Wanted Dead or Alive was, itself, dead. The corporation, however, would continue, with Jon Bon Jovi as its sole undisputed owner. The message was clear. The reunion was not going to happen, ever. Check out my video on how he did Skid Row. That one's a doozy as well. Like, subscribe. Thank you.